legendary rise in the UFC to being unable to win a single fight just to come back better than ever, this is the story of Dominic the Devastator Reyes. Dominic was born in 1989, Hesperia, California. He was a child from a poor American-Mexican family who clawed his way out of poverty through sports. But in the beginning, MMA was not even in the back of his mind. But sports definitely were. From wrestling to baseball and football, Dominic showed activity and desire for success early, chasing any sport he could. But his primary goal was to compete at the highest level of the NFL. Reyes and his three brothers had the full support of their parents, and competition was honestly just their way of life. After graduating from Hesperia High School, Dominic found his way to attend Stony Brook University, where he played college football and became a defensive back for the school's Division I football team. He excelled at being a part of the Seawolves crew and later was named a captain in his senior year. However, Dominic differs from other fighters because he did not neglect his education because of sports. He participated in one of the most competitive school programs, where he later became a Bachelor of Science in Information Systems. Balancing between academics and pursuing sports was by far the most difficult thing in his life. After playing on the football field, he would rush to the classrooms, where he would have to be on top of his schoolwork because school projects could not be completed on their own. In addition, he was the first person at the university to receive a degree and play football at the same time.
And I checked a bunch of other fighters' Wikipedia pages. They don't have an occupation listing other than just that they're an MMA fighter. So I'm just curious what this is. I also know that you went to Stony Brook University and graduated with a degree in economics, I believe?
In information systems, specializing in business and economics.
In 2013, it seemed he was one step away from reaching his dream in the NFL, but fate had something bigger and better in store for him. After graduation, Dominic managed to catch the NFL's attention, but he fell short because, as they said, his speed was average. Despite this, Reyes turned to the Canadian Football League, but his motivation was not at a good level. He did not want to settle for anything less than the first league. Although Dominic was so close to his dreams, they just seemed so far away. He became lost, depressed, and forced to return home from New York home to California. Fortunately, Dominic still had the support from his family. His father had a cabinetry business where Reyes could work, and his brother Alexander referred him to the MMA training at Combat Cage Academy, where Dominic could vent his anger. However, MMA training was not completely unknown to him then.
And what sort of led you to martial arts, going from football to martial arts?
My brother, Alex Reyes, owns his own gym over here in Victorville, California. 2-division champ at King of the Cage. There's a gym there, might as well go and train. My summers, when I went to Stony Brook, when I'd come back, I'd train martial arts. I would cross-train. It helps with balance and everything. It's really good for football. And in high school, I was a wrestler.
And honestly, there's no better place to find yourself, especially if you're an athlete at heart. At every training, you have the opportunity to relieve stress and increase your self-confidence. And when you see that MMA is actually going well for you, there is no doubt that it will get you back on your feet in all aspects of life. It was no different with the lost Dominic Reyes. It didn't take long for him to start a new sports career, different from the one that he dreamed of. In December 2013, the Devastator was born, and his amateur career saw its first break.
Your nickname, the Devastator, obviously we've all seen your fighting style. It's a very devastating style of fighting, but who gave you that name?
I actually got it from my brothers because I used to be the Dominator. I grew up with that name, but Dominic Cruz had that name. I got respect for those who come before me. So I changed to the Devastator because me and my brothers were sparring and I was kicking them, and they were like, dude, those kicks are devastating, man.
4 wins at minor competitions in America in half a year. There, he felt the sweetness of victory in every way possible. A year after his amateur triumphs, Reyes knew what was next. He was never meant for the NFL. MMA was his future.
Everything happens for a reason.
In football, even if you do everything right, the result will not always go in your favor. It's based on teamwork and everybody has to work perfectly to win. On the other hand, in MMA, you are alone in the cage and everything depends on you, on your preparation and your approach to the fight. There, you have more control over your destiny, and Dominic loved that fact. There was no X factor to guess around. It was just purely about who is more skilled. In December 2014, Dom debuted in the King of the Cage as a light heavyweight fighter, and he only needed 1 round to present himself with a technical knockout. And not surprisingly, the following years brought even more success. He crushed 4 more opponents, only one of whom managed to reach the judge's decision, but he fell short, and Dominic was victorious and undefeated once again. But being undefeated out of the UFC doesn't mean mean anything. We all know how much money MMA brings if you're not a UFC fighter, so it's not surprising that Reyes, like many other fighters, had to work and train at the same time. Luckily, he had a university degree and was able to get a job in his field.
What do you do, for work besides, mixed martial arts? What sort of pays the bills outside of fighting?
I work for a high school around here, Oak Hills High School. Yeah, I do tech support for the entire campus because I got my degree in information systems at Stony Brook. So I put my degree to use. Real happy with that. It's a good job. Well, I train after work. I train in the evening because I work in the morning, 7 a.m. to 3:30, and then I have the rest of the day.
He says that it was complicated to find opponents who would challenge his unbeaten record. Fighters were reluctant to sign fight contracts to face the Devastator. 2017 was definitely his year, where after one win, he got a call up to Legacy Fighting Alliance against Jordan Powell. Remember what his brother said about brutal kicks?
Those kicks are devastating, man. If you landed a head kick or even across the forearm, you might break their forearm.
It turned out they were telling the truth, and it was poor Jordan who had to experience the devastating power of his kicks. The knockout that followed after 50 seconds of the fight was especially sweet because of Powell's behavior. So Dominic became the man who knocked out the cocky fighter and went viral for it. Just 20 days after that, he got the chance of a lifetime to finally make his UFC debut. His opponent, Joachim Christensen, was 10 years older and 13 fights more experienced than Dominic. But all of Christensen's experience couldn't prepare him for the young legend approaching the scene. 30 seconds in and a straight left to the chin was all that was needed for the performance of the night bonus and the start of an inspiring career. After 5 months, Dominic got a new fight against Jeremy Kimball, and already in the second UFC fight, he found himself at his first pay-per-view event. Kimball was a dangerous striker, but Reyes was ready to trade blows. However, Jeremy opted for the takedown. It was a huge mistake that Dominic took advantage of by fighting fire with fire. As Reyes reversed positions and took him down, it was over. Dom took his back and made him tap, taking home another flawless first round win. The pressure and nervousness was there for Reyes, but it didn't break him, and this victory only boosted his confidence. It was the end of 2017, and Dominic showed his capacity and decided to devote 100% of his career to chase for the title. Only then was he confident enough in his path that he left his IT job behind.
Can you just tell us a little bit about what you do as in IT? That's very interesting.
I just recently resigned, obviously. I'm just very committed to my craft, and I know what I want out of my life, so I just put my nose to the grindstone and just worked every day, and paid off.
It was May 2018, and Reyes clashed with Jared Cannonier, the future middleweight title challenger, while he was still competing in the light heavyweight division. In a very contained fight, Reyes won by technical knockout towards the end of the 3rd minute. He presented great striking and the ability to take shots. It was important to see how Dominic would receive the blows because he only stayed in the cage for a short time so far. The thing with fighters like this is that nobody could get a full picture of his capability, and Dominic has made sure to make quick work of it every time. This fight threw him into the first league and brought him to a serious ranking, and then he continued to improve from there. With 9 perfect wins, Reyes only went the distance once, but that changed in the next 2 fights where he found himself face to face with Ovince St. Preux and Volkan Ozdemir. It's understandable that finishes fall harder when a fighter is near the top of the division, but Dominic actually continued to dominate regardless.
It was a good growing experience in the cage and out of the cage. I went 3 rounds like you mentioned. I got to feel the pace, what it is to pace in the fight at this level. Overall, I am who I think I am. I'm an animal, and I got to prove it.
He finally got the feeling of adrenaline and excitement that he wanted to have in the NFL. Crowds in the stands and their cheers at big UFC pay-per-views is what Dominic lived for. People couldn't help but say things about Dominic like, here is another UFC champion. Here is the guy that will bring problems to John Jones.
Was it cool to have a walkout on this massive card with all these celebrities, with this crazy atmosphere to go into your fight tonight?
Hell yeah. I mean, when I walk out and the crowd's going crazy, that's it, man. That's it. That's everything. That's why I get so excited for these events. That's why I train so hard, because I dream about this. I'm just the walkout, the crowd, the cheering, the knockout, everything. It was everything I could have ever imagined, and I'm so honored and proud to be on this card.
Now, all that stood between him and a title shot was the legend Chris Weidman. But it was a bad night for the former middleweight champion, as Reyes did what he does best. A counter left sent Weidman onto his back. Then Dominic unleashed tons of hammer fists to seal his final victory before his big night that awaited him in February 2020. In the fight against an experienced wrestler, Dominic showed that even if his opponent takes him down, he will need a ton of strength and energy to keep him on the ground. This was a great weapon to use against Jones's wrestling arsenal in their near future. True, Weidman wasn't at the top of his game, but for a young Reyes, the finish was still pretty impressive.
You know, I'm finishing fights. I just got another finish on my record. I'm 12-0. I might be one of the only undefeated guys, you know, left in the world at light heavyweight. I'd like to fight John next. I feel like I deserve it.
It seemed as if everything had been preparing him for this moment. Dominic Reyes got a chance to do what 11 great fighters failed to do before him. He was one step closer to making his dream come true. And in front of him was the one and only Jon Bones Jones, the ultimate obstacle for all people who wanted to touch the light heavyweight gold. The title was not the only important thing in this fight, because the victory over Jones would be a legendary win, and Dom was determined and confident to get it. But Jones was not impressed, at least not yet.
I cannot wait to put my hands on him. I know nothing about him, honestly. I know nothing about him. I see the games he wants to play with the insults. I don't really care. At the end of the day, my job is to destroy this dude and start focusing on 2020. You know what I mean? I'm gonna have a great 2020, and it's gonna start off by destroying Dominic. But you're a pawn in this game, bro. I've been talking about it for a long time. Like DC, like all of them, bro. You're a pawn in this game.
Say I'm a pawn?
You're a pawn in this game, bro.
How so?
You're just a piece in this puzzle, bro.
Piece in the puzzle?
I'm trying to be great, bro, and you're just a part of it. You're a small part of it.
As am I, and you're just another pawn in my puzzle.
That's fine. Everyone's undefeated before they fight me, bro.
No, they're not. They're not, though. They're really not, though.
Trust me.
You fought one undefeated guy.
Trust me, bro.
But that doesn't matter. What does that have to do with...
Daniel Cormier was undefeated.
What does Daniel Cormier have to do with me?
Ryan Bader was undefeated.
What does Ryan Bader have to do with me?
You're not special, Dominic.
Oh, I'm the one. I promise you.
You're the one.
You will see.
From the first bell, Reyes was dialed. He put striking pressure on Jones, pushing him against the fence and defending his takedown attempts. Jones couldn't take him down and keep him on the ground even if his life depended on it. So, like never before, Jon was unanswered for the first 3 rounds. Bones has never been closer to feeling like giving up, and it seemed like this was the night of the Devastator.
I was fighting Dominic Reyes, and it was in round 1. He hit me with like a spinning back kick to the face, and then he punched me in the stomach, and I hit the floor, and it was technically a knockdown. And even the look that he had in his eyes, and the way he talked to me before the fight, telling me he was a multi-sport athlete, and he was giving me a true run for my money. He was the only other person to do it to me outside of Gustafsson. And I remember thinking to myself, hey, you've had a great career. You've done a lot of great things. This kid, he wants it. He's hungry for it. Jon, it's okay. It's okay if you come up short in this one. Like, just don't let him knock you out. But you know, you can just kind of skate through this one and let him have it. Let the kid have it, Jon.
Instead of giving up, Jon decided that he would be the one to turn up the pressure and convince the judges that the throne still belonged to him. This plan worked even better as Dominic grew tired after 3 rounds. As the end neared, Jones came to light once again, by unanimous decision of the judges. The king remained undisturbed in his long reign. Still, not everyone thought that Jon had done enough to pull him out of this certain defeat.
Going into the last round, I had Dominic Reyes 3-1. My kids are terrorizing me that the fix is in and how can this happened, Dad? Reyes won that fight, and the list goes on of people that are reaching out to me.
Most people that I've talked to think Jon won the last 2 clearly. Most people, few disagree, believe that Dominic Reyes won the first 3. And the 3rd round is the one that seems to be, you could go, well, Dominic scored more, but it was close enough where you could see someone giving it to Jon, particularly since Jon was pressing the action. Jon was pushing forward. Maybe you give it to Jon, but they thought Dominic won it. But they said if there's a disputable round, it is that 3rd round.
I do feel disrespected. One of the judges had it 49-46. Like, who are you? I might want to have a word with you. But other than that, man, I know I won that fight. I was in that fight. I don't have to watch the replay. I was there. I made Jon Jones look like just a man.
But the last 2 rounds decided, and it was over for Reyes. The only way to beat a dominant champion is to finish him, and Dom failed to do so. The question is whether he could have done anything more, because he really went all out. After this fight, in the eyes of many people, he became known as the man who beat Jon Jones. Instead of being satisfied with the fact that he went toe-to-toe with the legend of the sport until the very end, this fight had the opposite effect on him. Just like when his NFL dreams were crushed, Dominic was mentally fried and lost, except this was much worse for him. Reyes found himself in darkness and despair, and things went downhill for him in the worst possible way.
In order to get to the light, you gotta go to the dark sometimes.
Rumors of a rematch began to circulate, but John was smarter than to accept another showdown with Reyes. He decided to expand his warrior campaigns to the heavyweight division, leaving the light heavyweight title for other fighters. It was logical to think that Dominic would find himself in another title shot, which he did 8 months later. His opponent was Poland's Jan Blachowicz, who wasn't given much of a chance after everything Reyes showed against Jones. But instead of devastating Blachowicz, Dominic was somehow finished by TKO in the second round.
Suddenly, not confident in who I am anymore. I started doubting my skill set. I started doubting all the work I've done. I doubted whether I was who I proved I was all those years in the UFC. Like, am I really that dude? I was fighting for the belt. I wasn't fighting for me. Man, it was so weak. It was so weak of me.
Before the fight with Jan, Reyes had problems at home. Both parents got sick with COVID-19, and he, as someone very close to his family, could not even see them 3 months before the fight. The training camp was grueling physically and mentally. Reyes was trying to adapt to some changes in his fighting style, which later turned out to not be the greatest idea. Not many people knew this, but Reyes actually came into the fight with a broken nose. Many people thought it was only a matter of time before Dominic became his old self. He only had 14 fights, and he was still young and fresh. He just tasted defeat, some would say by theft, and later a technical knockout. Reyes had a lot to learn from his last 2 fights, but with his return in 2020, things turned out to be the opposite. In Fight of the Night, Dominic would run into Jiri, and his career was not looking too bright. Jiri Prochazka absorbed all the blows, distributed them, cornered Reyes against the fence of the cage, and knocked him out with a spinning elbow in the second round. The despair in his story only continued further though. Reyes fought a good fight, and the only time he didn't resist was when he was completely unconscious. However, questions began as to whether he would ever win again, and whether he would ever reach a UFC belt. You know how the MMA fans are. As soon as a fighter puts a couple of losses together, they drill them endlessly. Nevertheless, Dominic gained the respect of fans after the fight with Jones, and besides, he was so likable as a person that everyone couldn't wait to see his hand raised. However, the only thing worse than 3 consecutive losses is a 4th. Dominic took a year and 8 months off to recalculate and recover his brain cells after the knockout. Everyone thought things couldn't get worse, but Dominic sadly proved us wrong. In November, Ryan Spann became another man in a series that not only won, but also finished Reyes. From the unstoppable Devastator, the man who many people believe defeated Jon Jones, defeats had now become his tradition. In addition to losing his undefeated image in the eyes of fans, the question was how long the UFC would keep him after 4 straight losses. The number of fights on the contract is not infinite, no matter how good of a fighter you are. So Reyes was nervous to say the least. Back-to-back losses and the fear of contract expiration. Losing to Jones took too much of a toll, and for the fans, it was sad to watch. Reyes had truly become devastated.
I lost myself after that fight because there was a myriad of things going on, and the attention, and it was constant questions like, what would anything you can do or whatever, like everybody kept trying to bring me back to that, and it was just like, it's over. But I was still holding on to it as well. But then also I went to that dark place and really examined myself and everything around me and really took a good look at things from a realistic point of view. And then I found the light, and now I'm back.
As if all of the above was not enough, Reyes was supposed to return in January at UFC 297, but revealed that he suffered deep vein thrombosis. He couldn't train and stayed on blood thinners for 3 months to improve his condition.
In January, when I had the DVT, the deep vein thrombosis, waking up every day was a gift. I was like, man, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to fight again, let alone win again.
His last fight took place in June 2024. Reyes was met in the cage by Dustin Jacoby, who, like Dominic, was once a dangerous fighter on a quality winning streak, but Jacoby entered the fight losing 3 of his last 4 fights. Reyes had no choice but to take advantage of this opportunity because who knows if he would get another. Once a title challenger, he was now ranked 15th coming into this fight. He came in hungry with a bloodshot look in his eyes to show everyone that the UFC is where he belongs and that he could have a return. Just like that, after 2 minutes of the fight, he survived Dustin, turned the odds, and destroyed him.
I'm just blessed, man. I'm grateful and blessed. That's where I'm at right now. It's been a long journey, as you all know, and it's hard to stay stay the course. But I trusted in my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and I have my team and my family around me and stayed the course, man. I never gave up on myself. I just kept fighting, kept training, kept getting better. And here I am, man, back in the winner's circle, 2-year layoff and from fighting, and it's like I'd never left.
Dom didn't want to give up. He didn't want to retire. Instead, he wanted to make an inspiring story out of his rough downfall. He needed a win, and he was determined to get it, even on his 5th attempt. In none of his defeats did he blame anyone but himself, because at the end of the day, it was his fault. But with that, Dominic Reyes announced that his 2nd title run starts now. And if you did make it to the end of this video, click the video that just popped up here, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.